Hello, this is ArtPond live streaming, and I'm John Ransom Phillips. And the thrust of these interviews, as you well know, is to explore with different people different kinds of creativity. What's particularly apt about the live streaming, I think, is that it allows our visitors to express themselves in ways that maybe they wouldn't normally. So it's totally spontaneous. Maybe we say things differently than how we would normally say it, and that's to their and our advantage. And of course, I'm extremely pleased today to introduce to you a wonderful and exciting person, creative in her own right, and that is Wendy Federman. Welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Wendy, as you well know, is a distinguished producer and a four-time Tony Award winner with 17 Tony nominations. She is moving in the direction of film of late. In fact, she's not given up on Broadway. In the new season, she has two new productions.
We actually, in Broadway, there will be four, and then one for Broadway and one London. As of right now, one never knows.
So the count is changing constantly.
I learned to never say never because things can come up. Sometimes a project can pull itself together, whether it's the material, the director, an actor, the theater becomes available. So you kind of always stay on your feet a little bit. If it looks like something that I would think is creative, interesting, is creative enough interest, and looks like it has financial
makes sense.
Also, then why not?
Go for it.
I don't like to put a cap on anything or say this is it. So I guess the expression "never saying never," even when I say no, I'm done. I'm really done for this year. But I've just learned that something terrific can come across in an email or a phone call the next hour, day, you don't know. So kind of have to remain open to the universe and what it brings.
That's well put. We do have to remain open to the universe. And the universe is extraordinarily rewarding when we are there. I want to ask you though, you're a producer. I think the public is sometimes confused about what a producer does because we have
We're
words
confused
like
sometimes.
we have executive producers, line
Right.
producers,
Right.
co-producers, assistant producers,
Mm-hmm.
associate. Rather than giving a dictionary definition, what do you perceive producing to be about?
And it really does vary. The titles vary from theater to film to television, but what a producer should be is really the leader, the captain, the mother, father of the team, looking for the material, being there for the creatives, putting, of course there's the financial side of it, but there's so much more to it, making sure that all of the elements, it's making the stew, it's the recipe to the stew, and making sure that everything is going smoothly and bringing that creative work of art, whether it's a theater piece or a work of film, now that I've had some film experience. And even though they're both different, the similarities are it's got to be a wonderful work of art, it's got to be well written, well directed, your creative talent needs to be there. And as a producer, you have to have sort of looked at the picture of, and do the numbers make sense? Can we do this project where we feel that it will make sense, that it will be pleasing to an audience, that we know who our audience is, and that we are still keeping our investors in mind, so that there's an equal balance of sort of everybody being happy. It's standing in the back. I can relate it more to live theater, just standing in the back of the orchestra, and the audience is loving the show, and you look around, and especially if it's a big musical, you can be employing over 100 people that day, that week, and your investors are happy because they have ownership and pride of this wonderful creative project and are receiving money back and making money on it. And those are just very wonderful, special moments that you've been a part of steering it, guiding it, helping to make the decisions, to bringing it from the page either to the live stage or the screen. And you're involved sort of almost on every kind of level. There isn't a thing that a producer probably doesn't look at at some point.
And each would be different, I would suspect. Some projects, as you pointed out, includes the director and maybe some of the casting.
Right.
So you would step in and complete maybe the casting. Other times the casting is you start from the beginning. So the challenges are different, I would suspect.
It just depends. Like I said, sometimes a project will come up and I will get, and it just, again, it's taking time and building relationships as you do in any business. I get a call from somebody that I've worked with, a producer I've worked with, who goes, this has come up. I got my hands on this great material, and this wonderful actor or actress wants to do it, and we can get such and such director, and this theater is possibly available. Do you want to be on my team? So you're joining in. You're still going to sit at the table and give commentary on how best to be a part of bringing it forward to getting it on stage, and not only getting it there successfully, but then running it successfully, whether it's the ad campaign, helping in working out press opportunities. I live primarily in Bergen County, New Jersey, which is a great demographic for theater going, so I pride myself on being a conduit for getting the word out in that area. But so we all bring to a project where we can help in our expertise, to reading, getting submissions of new plays or music that would be starting from really, from the very beginning, where there isn't a director attached yet, or there isn't talent, or or it needs to, go out of town and try out, or all those steps. So it really does depend on where you get involved in the project, and they are all different.
Sounds like a lot of it is timing.
Now that's everything in life, isn't it? The old bashare sometimes, of just being in the right place at the right time. It's timing.
An actress wants to be in this role and she's available.
That's
the theater comes
definitely
available.
A big, especially with theater, especially with Broadway, because when people ask me what's Broadway all about, and sometimes I say, well, sometimes it's real estate. We've got 41 theaters, and that limits how many productions can come in, how many new Broadway shows, because if a show comes in and it turns out being a smash hit, maybe it'll stay longer and the landlord will be happy if it's making a lot of money, So there's a theater that may have less availability. I mean, the theater that The Lion King is in and that Wicked is in, no producer is going to have that theater in the back of their mind that's a dream theater for them, because they're such successful shows and their life is, no one can even imagine how many more years or decades they might run. But that's all a part, again, of smart producing, is keeping in mind, also knowing, again, for live theater, what size theater, what type of theater would be the best for your production, and then hoping that you get the support of one of the theater owners who feels the same way, and then that theater becomes open. Sometimes when a show goes in with all good intentions and doesn't work, and maybe those producers decide that it's for everyone's best interest that we close sooner, then sometimes a theater becomes available that you don't expect. Timing. And then again, you hope that you've got your elements of the bashare, of the luck, that all the people that you want to be working on that can be available for that timing to get it into the theater. And then again, in Broadway, we have a very defined season, because the Tony Award cutoff is usually somewhere end of April or 1st of May, and if you start any time after that, then you're eligible for the following season. But a lot of shows, unless they're mega hits, or they're just coming in as specialty acts for the summer, really don't want to come in more, toward after Labor Day, when the city is, back and busier. It's a good summer with the tourists, but for new material, mostly for Broadway, opens, season would be considered after Labor Day. Like the big New York Times Arts and Leisure section was this past weekend, and that's really where a lot of the shows took their big 1 or 2 page ads to announce that they're coming in this year. And the year for Broadway being, I'm not sure what the Tony cutoff date is, but again, it could be anywhere from, let's say, April 25th to May 2nd, because there's a specific timing. You know, film works on the calendar year, but for Broadway, you know, we always keep in mind, in fact, April, you can find an unusual amount of opening nights. That last week before the cutoff date, you could have a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday opening nights, and even wind up, there's been a few occasions where there have been 2 shows opening on one night, which you certainly don't want. But if you're trying to get in by that deadline, and it's the best for your show, you do whatever need be. If you have enough time, the luxury of time, you try to pick your date in advance. And we kind of like Thursdays and Sundays have become the biggest traditional opening nights, mostly because of the papers going out on the Friday's a big issue, and going out on a Monday. But again, if you get your show, if you get a theater, and if you have your talent, and you can only get a Tuesday or Wednesday, you grab it.
And a good producer.
Well, that helps.
We're talking with Wendy Federman, producer, Tony Award winner, a celebrated lady. I would like to explore the less public side of you.
Okay.
I'd like to maybe explore your origins, what brought you to this level of success. You seem to be a person self-described as it begins here, maybe your guts, your intuition, maybe your heart. And from what I understand, there was always music and art in your family growing up. And your mother was a singer?
She was a professional. She was a singer. She had her own radio shows. She did Broadway. So the house was constantly filled with, if it was not her singing, she had on the soundtrack of something, mostly Rodgers and Hart or Rodgers and Hammerstein or Lerner and Lowe. You know, those were the music of the day. So my parents loved Camelot and My Fair Lady. Well, it made a tremendous impression because it was surrounded by music. And then her younger sister, my aunt, also started out very young with radio, and then went in 48, she went out to LA to make a film and fell in love with Hollywood, or just LA, you know, a palm tree. And she said, I'm not going back to New York. And then she stayed out there, did a couple of more films, and then segued, did a lot of voiceover work, a lot of the dubbing for the spaghetti westerns, and was an agent for many years. And then in her final year, she had a fabulous home off of Mulholland, you know, overlooking the valley, and she was a wonderful vocal coach, but not for singing, but for actually for voiceover work. Tremendously. And then she was married to an actor named Paul Frees, who was a great actor. He was in the original Thing and had some really good acting roles, but really found his fame as a voiceover actor. He was the voice of Boris Badenoff and the Jolly Green Giant and the Pillsbury Doughboy, and he's every original ride in Disney. So if you're in the Pirates of the Caribbean or the Haunted House or the Hall of the Presidents, all of those original voices, male and female, are Uncle Paul. He's Tony Curtis's female voice in Some Like It Hot. So when people ask me how I got the name for my company, for my production company, Foolish Mortals, and they're assuming it's a Shakespearean reference, which I'm happy to say, yes, I do read, I have read Shakespeare. But when you walk into the haunted house in Disney and you go into the main room and, you know, the doors close and everyone's, you know, getting scared, and you hear this voice going, "Welcome, foolish mortals," that's Uncle Paul. And
so it came from Paul rather than Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream.
There was a biography written about Uncle Paul called Welcome, Foolish Mortals. I just thought, I took out the welcome part and just kept the foolish mortals. I thought it was, well, nobody else had it, first of all, when we did the search, but I also thought it somewhat described my the profession that I was about to go into.
Can I take a different tact?
Of course.
And see, when I saw Foolish Mortals, I thought immediately that Wendy is interested in somehow imitating Puck. And what does Puck do is he misbehaves, he spreads chaos, but everyone has fun. And in a way, being a producer, I thought, is chaotic. It's all in the timing, the craziness of not knowing where you are, and then working hard to resolve it. That's Puck. That's Puck, who declares that about foolish mortals. And so I thought that you were imitating Puck, but in a way it applies, doesn't it?
It does apply, and it's quite possible that whoever wrote the dialogue was writing the dialogue for Disney when they were creating the haunted house and put that line in, was thinking of the exact same thing that
See, I think a lot of references can be historical and personal, Uncle Paul. They can also be literary, what people think. It's fortuitous for you that you cover yourself both literary, Shakespeare, and Uncle Paul biographical.
Fun name to have, because it's given it opens up a conversation, which is always kind of nice.
And you do spread chaos that leads to joy.
Sure.
The chaos that you inherit when people are hysterical and trying to get it all together, and you arrive and you're calming and you spread, as in Shakespeare, the love juice, and people start to see how things come together, and then they become happy. And then for you, very much from what I've read and from what I know about you, it's very important for the audience to be happy.
I find that I like when everybody around me is happy. I think life, we're so blessed to be here, and life is short and speeds by incredibly quickly, and enjoying the moment, even if the moment is a difficult moment, knowing this too shall pass, what can I get from it, what can I gain from it, and move on and move forward, because again, in another blink of an eye, it's another 5 or 10 years gone by. So planned chaos, I think, is a good way to put it.
Planned chaos. Because that's what art is, isn't it?
Planned chaos.
There's a lot that's chaotic in art, in making art, and then it starts to take shape and form, and then it begins to have an impact on people. And you, like Puck, you spread joy. When you talk about your productions, you always are joyous, and you always talk about the happiness. That word bubbles up constantly.
Well, you know what I do, and what any of us in my business do, it's not easy. And when not that any work is easy, but I guess I'm in a particular business when we succeed, it's public, and when we don't succeed, it's public, as I guess other large businesses are. But in art in particular, I guess I was a trained dancer and all of that, and having grown up with performers around me who are professional performers for years, I really have an understanding of the creative process and what actors and actresses go through. Talk about chaos. Even the top of the top, you have a job, and it's still wondering, okay, but what will I be doing a year from now? And I've heard this from big stars, that even though things are rolling along and their projects are moving along, but there's still always that thought of, it's not like they're going back to the desk tomorrow at 9 a.m. Although it seems that the world is changing so much over the last years anyway, even in the business sector of corporate and companies, and just the way that the world has, gone from, the internet has changed. Even it is and will keep changing the entertainment industry, let alone other businesses. I think whether it's chaos or just sort of, I remember saying to my kids, I always said, the only constant in life is change, and it's kind of a surfboard. And, it's like we go to exercise class to develop core strength. You kind of have to have core strength and develop that in life, because, things can happen and things can change, whether it's in your business mode, an actor drops out, a director can't do it, there's water damage in a theater. But I'm just saying a lot of things can
water damage.
But, you can just give lists of things.
Yeah, that's very real, isn't it?
Yes, it's happened.
There's a puddle over there.
Or, it floods your orchestra, or there's an electric issue in the neighborhood, and all of a sudden you can't have your show can't perform that night. To minor details of just actors being out, or issues, or the creative details. But you just, you have to, and then just to your personal, then taking into account everybody's personal life. that it's enjoying the moment, being as grounded as possible, but being able to swing and serpentine and try to stay on the surfboard. And when we do fall off, just try to stay as close, try to get back to it and get on it. But that's a lot what led me to when I started with this career, and it's going to be 10 years. I was an investor maybe another 5 or 6 years before that, because even though I had a decent understanding of the creative side, I needed to learn the business of show business. I knew other businesses, but
the artistic side was very personal.
Was personal,
based on relatives, Uncle Paul,
and not only
your
that,
aunt.
but especially in for Broadway. I was always, even when I was working in the business world, I would see 1 or 2 shows a week. Broadway, off-Broadway, something, and I was always the one in the neighborhood. What are we buying our tickets for? Put us together, give us the 10 shows we need to see this year. I always followed, and I always stayed up with it, or had stayed in touch with a few people that from the old days that were still, active. And one of the things that I find has helped me is that I'm the demographic of the ticket buyer for Broadway. It's primarily women of a certain age group. So I feel that I have the ability to have an idea of, is there an appeal for this? And not even about the material, but even looking at advertising material or hearing a catchphrase or other parts of it, because I'm also I'm the one on the other side of it. I'm the one that's going to be buying it, or that you want to buy it, because I'm still the largest, representing the largest demographic. So that sort of does help balancing out not only the creative side, but that's part of balancing out the business side. It's a product, and taking into account that the product is good, it's how to get the message out, and are we getting the message properly to the audience or the consumer that wants to see it. So I can always use myself for the most part, although in a good way there's a lot of entertainment, live theater that's coming out now that is skewing younger, which I think is terrific, because I love to see what young creatives are doing, and I think it's wonderful. I love when we see young people in the audiences, not only parents bringing their children, but when older teenagers or 20-somethings choose to come to theater on their own. I think is fantastic. Live theater has been around since the Greek tragedies, and can only aspire that it will continue, because it's a unique experience every time you go. Even though the actors are hopefully saying the same lines and singing that all of that is very structured, but the unique energy of a particular audience or a particular night can just be so different. I have sat through a lot of shows I've been involved with, some of them dozens of times, and no performance is ever quite the same.
Nor should it be.
And right, which I think is the uniqueness of live theater, and not taking away from film, because there are things that film can capture that theater can't. The breadth of a landscape or things like that, and that can be.
We're talking to Wendy Federman, and producer, and we invite your questions and comments, if you would write them in. Do we have a question?
We have a question. Have you ever had a flop?
Absolutely.
And what is the formula for a successful show? And what did you learn from it, I guess?
God. Well, I think with anything in life, and again, this isn't just a rule, I think, for theater. I think it's a rule for life. Sometimes we learn more from when things go wrong than when they go right. I've seen, the old ad, it sounded so good on paper. That actor for that role should have been perfect. An accredited director with lots of, great projects, awards, who just didn't fit the material. Opening at the wrong season, not having the right branding or messaging, even down to maybe the show didn't have the right title because it didn't explain enough to the audience what they were coming to see. Coming to a show with a theatrical piece is an expensive proposition, as opposed to, you know, staying home and turning on your TV set. It's a wonderful thing to do, you know, that live experience, but it's also, I think, our responsibility as you know, presenting the show, to make sure that we are appropriately letting the audience know what they're getting themselves in for their dollar. So I've learned a lot over the years watching, actually, it's sometimes some very, very senior, decades-long producers make some choices that I, in retrospect, didn't work out. And even maybe at that moment, I even felt, well, I don't know if I'd do it that way. But again, they were the senior on the team. But these are all things that inform and that we learn from. And you just sort of, you keep moving forward.
I think the question is asked because you've had so many successes that flops don't seem to be within the list.
You know, you get some flops, and sometimes you get, you know, and here's the interesting thing of the definition of a flop, where I've been involved with shows that have been artistically gorgeous, have been incredibly well reviewed, have even won awards, theater awards, but maybe have not come out as financially as well as one would hope for. But the show itself was really wonderful material, possibly even went on to have a life. And the encouraging thing is often when your investors and the backers say, you know, yeah, it would have, you know, I'm proud and happy that I was part of bringing this show in front of an audience because it was so wonderful or so special or so educational or sent such a message that I still remain happy that I was part of it. So I think there has to be a definition of flop. I think there are probably, in all the shows that I have done, 2 or 3 that creatively really went south and shouldn't have. I mean, they had either the right performers or they had the right material, but there was an element, I won't name names, but there were particular elements that just went wrong, and even at early previews. And sometimes you can go from a terrible early preview and open up spectacularly. You know, that's the job of between the creatives and the cast and the producers giving our commentary as well, but everyone's sort of pitching together to hone it down so in that preview time we can really get it as best as possible. But sometimes you just you see the train wreck coming, or sometimes I'll get asked by other producer friends, because often we say, you know, come see the show. It's like the first week. I'd love to know your thoughts. And sometimes you can make comments, and a couple of comments cutting out a number, a scene, a dialogue. You know, sometimes it's not that many. It can be sometimes minutia that can really just turn it and make everything work. And then sometimes you're sitting there going, there's just nothing I can say to this one.
It's interesting you said you can see the train wreck coming.
Sometimes you can.
Is that the instinct, the guts that you were talking about earlier?
Well, it's just also being, it's not only the instinct, but, you know, if I'm anything else, I've been a theater goer since my mom took me when I was, 4 or 5 to my first show. So I've just been going to theater for a long time. And, you know, every once in a while, and it doesn't mean that I always agree with a critic, because sometimes there are reviews that I wonder if I'm in the same theater as particular critics, and I hear that from other people as well. Like, why did we come to? We're never trusting that person's review again. And sometimes, you know, you're right on sync, and sometimes, you know, it's fascinating to me. I really feel the most important audience, or the most important reviews, are really from the audience. There is nothing, by the way, more important than audience word of mouth. When you come out of a theater, if you've really enjoyed something, it is so important. Tweet, Twitter, Facebook, call a phone, tell someone on carpool line, tell people in your office, because to me that is really the most important critic, is that audience. And there are famously shows that have succeeded beyond measure. Oh, Wicked, I think there were some terrible reviews for Wicked, and Wicked hit every right chord to me, and it's going to continue to, because of that, the empowerment, the Green Witch, and the stories, and the what comes out of there. And there's going to be a mom who maybe saw it 10 years ago younger, and then now maybe her daughter's old enough and she can take her daughter or some, so those things are wonderful, but it's amazing certain shows that have succeeded, and then there are shows that have gotten remarkable reviews that just maybe don't pique an audience's interest. As a producer, you want that call to action. Now it's easy enough, we can order our tickets on our telephones, but somebody still has to push the button or make a call, or if you live in the city or you're walking to Penn Station or wherever in that area, you need to be motivated to make that sale. And that's the business part. It's kind of like anything else. It's in the department store. And what is going to make me or motivate me to go to the third floor because there's something there that you're letting me know that I have to have. We can never forget in our business, and we don't. Again, we are a luxury item. We're an incredible luxury item, and one that warms the soul and the heart, and is a wonderful thing to. When I know for myself, and when I speak with other friends who are some now even becoming grandparents, and they all can't wait. They're calling me up. Okay, she turned 4. What can I take her to? She's old enough. She'll sit. What can I take her to? That when people look back on family experiences or group experiences or first or second dates or anniversaries, a Broadway show or a show in their town, in their great theater. And there are some wonderful theaters. I've been fortunate to hit some of the, theaters, visit some theaters in towns around the country, and they're just wonderful and as enthusiastic as we are.
I would think then it's not just a luxury item, it's something essential. What you're saying about human communication, about memory, about connecting somehow with our feelings, particularly with the people who are taking us there.
I appreciate your saying that. I guess I don't think we should ever take for granted that
it's the oldest art.
It is the oldest
Using
art,
our
but
body.
that we need to still, as the presenters of the shows, make sure that we are putting together the best possible entertainment, because we do appreciate the fact that the consumer is spending their hard-earned money to come see us, and they're not sitting home and just turning on a television. And yes, I think it is the most enriching to the soul of that live experience. But
we are speaking with Wendy Federman. And if you get an email from Wendy, you will find at the very bottom of the email a quotation from the 19th century English writer George Eliot. And I'm always struck by it. It is never too late to be what might have been. And that obviously has meaning for you. In fact, I think it illustrates a lot of the energy in your life.
Well, when I speak at career days, whether high schools or universities or even at business conferences, but especially when it's a younger group, and one of the first things I say is, whatever career you're doing, do not feel you are locked in. And any job you have, anything you do, even if you had been a babysitter as a teenager or done any kind of work, it all informs what we are, what you become, and that information stays with you, and you don't know how that bit of information, that memory in there, helps to make a better decision, at another point in your life. But to feel that pressure of, well, I went to law school, I have to just be a corporate lawyer. I went to med school, I have to just be a doctor.
I have to use the education.
I've worked with so many producer partners who have their law degrees, but they just sort of followed their heart and they morphed into something else. And doctors who are painters, and people that, to branch out. I mean, I just think that we should not let our age define, within, not crazy boundaries, but within boundaries, what we can do.
So this statement is a lot about you.
It definitely was about me. It's on my desk and it's right there.
It's in your emails.
To remind me and to just spread the word that, when I have friends and partners in my age bracket saying, well, maybe I'll take the month, I'll slow down, or this or that. And if you want to slow down, or you're doing something that you love because you're telling me, oh, I'm going to go to Italy and visit all the museums or something wonderful that will enrich you, fine. But if they're referring to it as a way of, okay, I'm getting near a certain number, so that means I can't do X anymore or be productive anymore. No. Unless that makes you happy, and if that's making you happy, that's great.
Wendy, I think then it's because in great part you began in the context of music and art. You didn't necessarily embrace it professionally. You were you were a psychologist. You were in the import business.
Well, what happened was I was trained as a dancer in singing and acting, and I had promised my father, who was the business side of the family, had a manufacturing and import business, to get a business degree. And whether I was going to do that, I was working at the family business, but I was looking at doing more design and still going into entertainment and business. But I graduated, I was young, and a few months after I graduated university, my father passed away. He was young, he was 61. And it was just my brother and myself, so I stayed with the business, and for many years. It was that was just the thing to do,
But this applies to you in terms of what you might
absolutely
have become.
Well, one never knows. I don't see myself ever. I would never have thought to go back to be what I wanted to be, which was a Broadway dancer. I still think that's why
You're not tempted one night when you return from the theater to
dance
around?
Who says I don't? But
I do. When I'm alone, I dance.
When I was part of Pippin, I loved training in Fosse-style dancing. My feet and toes were just doing my thing. But you get to the physical realities of, okay, that's kind of not going to happen. But that's why I'm so supportive of the dance community, and I'm the nominating chair for the Astaire Awards. Because dancers, I think when you've got a musical, especially one that's got an ensemble, your dancers are really such a backbone, and it's a tough career. It's a physically tough career.
It's one of the toughest of all the
usually ends the soonest, unless you've really been able to morph yourself into getting into more meatier roles, and if you can, as opposed to just only relying on the body. And I think that our dancers need to be celebrated. And what I like about this particular Astaire Awards is that it's not always the star of the show. In fact, it usually isn't. It's sometimes just someone that has done an outstanding job that you have recognized, that's had a moment, and then this is their moment to say thank you. And again, we recognize a choreographer, not only Broadway, but we actually look at film musicals as well. And there's an award that's given to Best Choreographer in Film, because it's it's a tremendous art, and that's something that I don't think any other film, maybe the Emmys does it, but I know the Academy Awards, they don't look at choreography in terms of giving an award.
There's no award for choreography?
No, there might be. I know. I don't even know if they do it on the Emmys or not. It would be in that creative Emmys. I'm just not sure. But that's why I think it's really important to say, we know how important you are. And a smart director of musicals over the years, you kind of see that they're smart. They've developed a family of their own ensemble dancers, singers, and you kind of see the same wonderful familiar faces because they know they're great and they know their go-to, and that's also kind of nice as well. But it's
ensemble too.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful, and then it's great when when someone in the ensemble has that opportunity to break out, or whether it's in that show or there's another show that comes up and they get a chance to step up and have a more prominent role, or they move into choreography or directing themselves, which happens.
Good question.
Yes.
Do you encourage or discourage your actors to read negative reviews or any reviews?
I would never tell an actor what to do. That is so personal. And I've heard both. I've heard, that some just don't, and some directors don't, or choreographers don't. I mean, we have to. We don't have a choice.
Really?
Because part of our responsibility is, opening night. I love everyone else's opening night when I'm a guest. Mm-hmm. Our opening night, which can be joyful and wonderful and sharing it with everybody.
And scary.
But scary. And also you kind of want to read through all the reviews, because that's where you're mining for your material in terms of, okay, what are we presenting in our, if you're doing a TV commercial, a newspaper, or even for the website, you look for pull quotes. I mean, they do that with film also, so you kind of have to read everything, good, bad, or indifferent, because sometimes in what is perceived as a negative review, there could be a wonderful line about your actor. or your director. So you look for those little gems and plums, and then sometimes you're fortunate enough where it's all so good that you just have to prioritize which quotes or pieces of reviews get the message across. But I highly encourage, the film world, there are just so many more reviewers and reviewers of note, and that live all across the country, if not internationally, that review film. Where in theater, everybody seems to have one paper in particular, if not two, to read. So I would again really encourage for people that, to read, not just get your opinion from one source, but really read, if go online, and like I said, it's so important again, if you see something that you love, if it's a 99-seat theater in the middle of nowhere or the biggest Broadway show, word of mouth, audience word of mouth is absolutely the best, the effect, the exponential effect. Again, with social media now, it's not just, remember the song from Bye Bye Birdie, telephone. It's now there's the ability, you have 2,000 friends, you have 10,000 friends, you have this one, and when that spreads out there, you can almost feel that landslide coming in. All of a sudden you're looking, wow, the word's getting out. We're seeing our sales numbers. People they're talking about us in a wonderful way, and that's terrific, and it's appreciated, and the actors really appreciate it, and stay to the end to applaud for an audience. I know people were rushing. I'm a commuter, and we're rushing to our cars, and we're rushing to trains, but the actors really do appreciate when you hang out to applaud.
I've also seen that at the end when you're applauding, and sometimes it's muted and tentative, and then sometimes a few people strategically placed in the audience, maybe friends or parents, they will increase the volume or the energy, and all of a sudden that will invite the audience to really express themselves. And I have watched the actors and how that visibly affects them.
Of course.
And all of a sudden, where they were muted and dignified, they became expansive and happy.
Well, I can't say that we actually plant audience every night.
Did I say that?
But there's certainly no question. I mean, sometimes certain shows just, the audience can't help themselves. There is something so magical has happened that there's just this wave of, you can't scream or applaud loud enough. There are times when I've also seen where it is a wave, like you get a few in the front and then everyone will go, oh, okay, I can go, I can stand up. There are people that want to applaud a particular actor or actress so badly, or they want that one, that they kind of hold back a little bit. They don't, and then because they want to save it for that favorite person of theirs. I think as long as you show, as audience appreciation is shown, it really matters. It's from a musical back in the early 70s, and it was called Applause, based on, what was it all about? A wonderful Betty Davis movie, but it was Lauren Bacall who played the role. But the title song is What Is It That We're Living For? Applause. And it really does matter. These people, actors that put themselves out there.
And I think it matters to you.
Well, it matters because it's a sign of recognition that your work, that what you've done, what you've helped to assemble, has made people happy. And it's not the applause on maybe necessarily at an invited dress rehearsal or first preview with friends or even opening night, which is a friendly audience, but it's really when you stop by the theater randomly on a Tuesday night or a Wednesday, when it's an audience, or just a regular ticket buying, no friends or family audience. That's when you really get the flavor and the feel. And I'm always, in early performances and previews, I do it, of course, when I go to the theater, when a show's in the run, but I'm very attentive at intermission. I'm listening for everything. I call it the ladies' room line conversations. But again, we have to respect our audiences, and sometimes you get a couple of words, and if you hear a few people say the same comment, like, I don't understand what that song was doing in the second act, or, they lost me in that moment for a few minutes. But if enough of people say the same thing, then that is a note that should be noted and taken and passed along. Of course, you leave it up to your creatives to take that in and interpret it to the best. But, the best problems you can have is that if everyone doesn't like the same thing, because that's an easy problem to fix. Again, it's like when you go to someone else's show and they're saying, what do you think? When every 5 minutes you're making a note, and I'm not talking about, I don't like the color of the costume, I'm talking a real note, that's much more of an issue. Sometimes things, and it does happen, there are shows over the years that really get quite rewritten, and it really depends on the tenacity of the original producers, who's ever involved, and the creatives to keep going at it. If they can get there, and a lot of shows don't get to Broadway, and it's not for lack of funds. Sometimes with sometimes the financials are I don't want to say they're the least important, but they're not the problem. They're not the main issue. It's getting it right. There are certain products that just because you can raise the money for it or you have the money for it doesn't mean it should go to Broadway. And sometimes the decision when you've taken a show, and it's more with musicals, plays they sometimes go out of town, but it's more with musicals. You also have to know when, at that early time, and that's just a business model, your first loss is your best loss. Sometimes it helps to know that, or have that feeling going, maybe this is just as best as we can get it, and this is where we should be. And then other times, there are times that you say no, where decisions have been made for the better, going, yeah, this has a lot of problems, but we're going to keep going at it, and then it comes in, and then you have this fabulous piece of work. Musicals can take years and years and years and years. It's tough. A lot of elements going on. Getting it right and getting it into town. It can be a process.
Getting it right and getting it in town.
But when it works and it's wonderful, it's terrific. I revisited Phantom not that long ago, and I hadn't seen it for many years, and someone I knew wanted to see it, and I said, why not? And it was still, to the credit of everybody working on it, was still impeccable,
and fresh.
There was nothing about it that would make me think this was from 27 years ago. The stage, everything was still immaculate, and the staging was immaculate, and of course everybody in it was wonderful. And, so credit to everybody there, because they've, and that's also good producing as well as good creative, but not only did what was a wonderful product presented, but they have run it very well. And even the way that it doesn't have to be a lot, but whenever there's an ad for it, or you hear that music, it's presented right so that it reminds an audience, oh my, I never saw that, or it's been a decade, that would be a wonderful night out. Let's go see that again.
That's the supreme compliment. We're talking with Wendy Federman, and we have another question.
At what point during a show's duration do you feel the satisfaction that you and the show have succeeded?
Well, I guess I can answer it creatively and artistically. Creatively, and then financially. Obviously, there is nothing financially as knowing that your investors have not only been repaid, but that first profit, when you're able to send out when that first profit distribution checks go out, that's a really nice feeling, because it's sort of, dotting the I and crossing the T, that, yeah, we got it right, and people, they like us. We're good. We're getting the audiences. They're buying more tickets. That's a wonderful feeling. Creatively, that moment can come. It doesn't even have to be opening night. It could be before. Again, depending on the show, you're just watching it, and for myself, you just get that, whoa, this is, I just love this. This is working. This is great. And a lot of times, when I sit with an audience, I watch the audience as well. I'm turning around. And sometimes I'm jealous, because I know a really great moment's coming up, and I almost wish that I was seeing it again for the first time. And I want to see people's reactions, whether they cry, whether they laugh, whether they gasp. So it's kind of hard to say, because, it doesn't necessarily have to be opening night, and it might be after opening night, but sometimes it's before. Usually there's a moment, you know, with a show you have to freeze it 5 performances before opening, which means kind of wherever you're at, stop. The director, you do no more work, because that's when the critics come in. Critics in the States do not come in opening night. In London, they still do. In London, their opening night's still a press performance, but here, opening night is really friends, family, celebrity guests, but the critics have already been in. But you get that, you know, hopefully you're somewhere not too far along in previews where you're really feeling that the stew, you know, is, the ingredients have gotten to that just right taste level, and that you get that, okay, we've given it our best, and then it's in the hands of the theater. As I try to say, you know, whenever we all wish each other friends, producers with our other shows, you know, it's always may the theater gods be with you. Because then it's, you know, you could have, sometimes you just, you know, you think you know, and then you know.
Well, I think what's so wonderful about you is that you have fulfilled what George Eliot said, that you in your life are convinced absolutely that it's never too late, and that you have become what you might be and might become. And just watching you, Wendy, when you talk about theater, how your face changes, that there is a kind of special pleasure that comes over your face. And your eyes sometimes have a very far away look, like you're luxuriating in the beauty and the humor of having made people happy.
Well, with the questions you were asking, you know, especially about moments, I was going to the moments. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm...
to the moments.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'm necessarily done yet with what I'm going to do, because, you know, what's the worst that could happen? Well, it doesn't work out and I won't do that again. You know, again, within limits. I don't see skydiving in my future and things like that. But if you do, by all means, enjoy yourselves. Be careful. Be safe. Make sure.
Before you go, could you talk about Wakefield?
Oh, of course. Well, you know, in the terms of never say never and not being done with everything, I always looked at movies as being these wonderful places to tell these huge, big stories, and wonderful small stories as well, but was never quite sure again how, as a theater producer, what the entree would be. Had the fortune about 6 years ago from a mutual friend to be introduced to these 2 wonderful women, Julie Lynn and Bonnie Curtis, producers, both film producers with great track records and wonderful bodies of work that they've done from LA. And we stayed in touch. We became friends. We'd visit when we were on each other's coast. And I said, you know, if I'm ever going to do a film, I would just trust both of you to do it with, because I obviously have to be trusting you and learning from you, being the newbie on the team. But I like both their taste and their ethics, because I have to feel that if I was bringing not only myself, but my investor world group with me, that I was bringing them somewhere safe. And there was this particular script, Wakefield, which it's maybe been 2.5 years that showed up, and it just intrigued me. The first time I read it, it made me think about my personal life and other things. And I said, okay, this is interesting. In fact, it could almost be a play. It could almost be reshifted to be a play. But I said, I could see how this works as a film. And it's really it needs a bravura performance from an actor. It's really about this man, Howard Wakefield, a successful middle-aged attorney who goes home one night but chooses not to go back to his family. He hides out in the attic above his garage. He's going through this midlife crisis, taking a break from life, reevaluating his marriage, his kids, his whole world. And we sort of watch him through this journey. And I was fortunate enough at that same time that the script showed up that I was one of the co-producers on All the Way, which starred Bryan Cranston, who was mesmerizing 1,400 plus people a night as Lyndon Johnson. And it turned out that the writer of Wakefield, Robin Swikard, was thinking of Bryan as to be her lead actor, to be Wakefield. So again, And then Brian's schedule was very busy, and if we run into him, love the script, don't have time, and it worked out about a year ago that he got in touch with our writer and said, you know, something in my schedule shifted, and if you can all get it together, I can give you these 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And we just did it. We just pulled it together, and within about 8-9 weeks, not only pulled the funding together, but Julian and Bonnie in LA pulled together, and Robin pulled together a wonderful DP and their editors and everybody that was on that set. And Jennifer Garner, who gives a wonderful performance, and Beverly D'Angelo, and so just a wonderful group. It pulled itself together, and we were honored with, we literally were the last film, because by the time it all got finished up, I think, and we were submitted, but we got into Telluride Film Festival, which is a huge honor because they only take 25 films. And I'm just back from the Toronto Film Festival, and we have just been invited to the Hamptons Film Festival, which is great. And we will, God willing, be in a theater near you within the next certain amount of time. So, but for those of you that love Bryan Cranston, it seems like everybody loves Bryan Cranston. Again, just, you know, an astounding performance, and it's the kind of film that you're going to walk out of and think. And you're going to turn to the person next to you and go, whoa, okay, let's talk about this. It's interesting, thoughtful, and entertaining, and there's great humor in it at the same time. I'm very proud of it. I'm very proud that it's my first film, and I plan to do more.
Your first film.
But I'm not leaving theater, because it's still my love and passion. But I liked working on this film, and it was very fortunate because I've always also was told film is very young, and I will say that yes, a lot of the directors and producers who are not were, you know, it definitely, I think going into it, there are a lot of young people, so I was very fortunate that because of my theater experience that I was able to sort of segue in and now kind of be able to continue, because film has skewed not only to a younger demographic in terms of who's working in the industry, but even to the viewers. But they're finding in the last couple of years that films that are being made for, there's an older audience that is going to films, and that there are more and more films are even being made with more content, you know, not just, you know, Star Wars 20. And I like Star Wars, but not just Star Wars 20, that they're more with material of human stories. And for me, if I'm the film that I would do would have to have a storyline that really mattered.
And in that context of stories that matter, we will always see you. Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you.
more than a pleasure having you.
Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much, John.
Thank you. This is ArtPond live streaming, and our wonderful guest today was producer Wendy Federman, and we hope that you'll visit us next week. Thank you.